All right, good evening. Welcome to the gathering at Scott Memorial Home Edition. You might be able to hear the wind chimes in the back as I'm preaching. This is the last sermon in a series where we looked at the past, the history, where we came from as the gathering at Scott Memorial United Methodist Church. Then we looked at our present, who are we now, what are we doing, what's going on in our lives, where is God at work. And tonight I'm going to talk about the future of the church and where we're going. And when I talk to people at the church, especially knowing that I'm transitioning as the pastor, they are a little anxious and worried about the future. And there are times that we all get anxious or worried about something that we just don't know what to expect or what's going to happen. What will our lives be like in a few years? What will the church be like in the next few years? So that my go-to scripture is Matthew 6. Hi, Melissa. I've been at 25 to 34, which says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." When it comes to worry, we do worry about all kinds of things. Some of you might be worrying even now about what's going to happen on Game of Thrones and who will be sitting on the Iron Throne when all is said and done around 10:30 tonight. I have never seen Game of Thrones. That's not something I'm worried about, but I do worry. We all do. And U.S. News and World Report came out with an article on May 8th that shared a survey and research done by the American Psychiatric Association that found that, yes, guys, we are more anxious. We do worry more. So they polled people, and 39% of people surveyed feel more, they're worried more this year than they were last year. And another 39% of people said, well, we're not worried more, but we are still pretty worried. So that means that like 78% of us are worried, and we shouldn't be, right? And Jesus is saying, don't worry, just stop. Why are you doing it? And it's easier said than done, right? Because sometimes I feel like if I worry about things, it accomplishes something, when in reality, worry accomplishes nothing. It doesn't change my situation. It doesn't change me, except making me more stressed out or unhealthy or just feeling burdened. And yet we continue to do these things. And if you look at Matthew's words, he says, you know, who of you by worrying can add a single pekos to your haliki? Okay, that's in Greek, and in English it's translated, who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? But I love the actual Greek, because pekos, which is what they use for a single hour, doesn't mean hour, actually. It means like this part of your arm, from like your elbow to the end of your middle finger. So it was like a form of measurement, okay, anywhere from like 18 to 24 inches. So who of you, by worrying, can add even this much space to your haliki? And haliki means your stature, your height, or your age, or your existence. So they translated it, you know, who by worrying can add an hour to your life, because it doesn't seem like that much. But to me, this is like not even an hour. It's just minutes, right? It is like absolutely mindless to worry about things, because it changes nothing. It doesn't make a difference. It's a total waste of our energy and our time and our thoughts. And yet we do it all the time, right? So how do we stop worrying? How do we live into Jesus' command to us here? And yes, we can look at the birds of the field, we can look at the flowers, and we can realize that we serve a God who, if God is paying attention to birds, then God cares about you, right? And there is hope for you in whatever it is you're worrying about. And let's be like realistic. Most of us are not worried about whether or not we are going to eat food tonight, right? Or whether or not we're going to have a place to sleep or something to wear in the morning. Back in Jesus' day, these were real concerns of people living at that time. And yet for us, we still find other things to worry about. So how do we reprogram ourselves and cut back on the worry in our lives? Well, Let's go back to the beginning of Matthew 6, and if you look at it, it starts off by talking about 3 practices that were really, really common for all Jewish people back then. These might not be common for all Christians today, but back then, if you were Jewish, you did 3 things. You gave to the poor, you prayed, and you fasted. And so Jesus starts off by saying, hey, listen, when you guys give to the poor, do not hire a marching band to announce that you're going to be giving money to someone asking for change on the side of the street, and don't give them this big cardboard cutout of, I'm giving you $5, Joe. Don't draw attention to yourself. Just give to that person in secret. Don't even let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, because you're not giving for the attention of the community and those around you. You're giving to God. That's what's happening when you're giving to the person in need. Or when you pray, do not Facebook Live your prayer and talk as long as possible, so people think that you are just totally profound and your prayers are amazing and they know that you pray on a regular basis. When you're praying, you're talking to God. So just focus on God. Don't do it publicly and loudly with a megaphone so the whole world knows that you are talking to God. Make it secretive. And when you fast, don't put on sweats every day when you go to work and refuse to bathe and cry out with hunger pains anytime you smell food. That's not helpful. Get your act together. Shower. Don't let the world know that you are fasting. It's a spiritual discipline to help your relationship with God. Don't use it to brag and show off to the world. And I think what this is revealing to us is sometimes we worry because we are so focused on what other people think about us. Do people think I'm good? Do people think I'm faithful? Do people think I'm a good pastor? Oh my gosh, I have to show them. Instead of making my actions driven by and motivated by my love of God and my relationship to God, when I do things so that the world thinks I'm a better person, then I lose, they lose, everybody loses. It needs to be about these spiritual practices, need to be about my relationship with God and building that up and letting my walk with God flow out into my actions with others, but not for their praise and not for their acknowledgement in any way. So we worry sometimes because we're so focused on peer pressure and not about what matters most. And when we get that right, it leads into what Jesus talks about in Matthew 6:19-21, where he says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So sometimes we do things because we want other people to like us. Sometimes we do things because we want more stuff. We have this tendency to collect things, to hoard things, to treasure material things on earth when all of those things may not last, right? Just look at the devastation people experience when a hurricane comes through, an earthquake, and they lose it all. Was it worth it? Well, how do we learn about storing things up in heaven? What does it look like when we intentionally make a decision in our life to have our treasure in heaven? Well, there are countless examples I could give you, but one that came to mind is about a man who passed away in March of this year at 107 years old. His name was Johann van Holst, and he was born in Amsterdam and eventually became the principal of the Reformed Teacher Training College. So he was in charge of it in the 1940s, and in January of 1943, he worked with 2 other people in town because what happened was they had rounded up all the Jews in Amsterdam. They were getting ready to deport all of them to concentration camps. And so they knew they didn't have much time, and what happened was his college, his university, was situated where his back lot was right up against the nursery where they were keeping all of these infants through 12-year-olds, these Jewish children that they were preparing to send off to a concentration camp. So Johann said, this can't happen. I've got to do something to save their lives. And so what they would do is get the permission of the parents, and they would hand these kids over that fence, and Johann and his staff and his students would find new identities and homes for these children to save as many lives as possible. So they started in January of 1943, and September 29th of 1943, he says he'll never forget it. That's the day when they came to collect all of the children. And although Johann had successfully saved around 600 children, 600 lives, there were still 100 kids left standing there as the transportation vehicles arrived. And he knew he didn't have much time, and he wondered, how many more kids can I save without the German soldiers realizing what had happened and that what I was up to and destroying all the work that I'd done. So he said, I can save about 12 children, and 12 more kids were passed over the fence, and it just broke his heart thinking about the 70, 80, 90 kids that were left behind. So that's what it's like to store up treasures in heaven. I mean, he was putting his life on the line, he was putting his reputation on the line, he was putting the lives of others on the line, but he was doing it to fight against evil and injustice and oppression, to stand for what was good, to stand for what was right, to stand for the lives of these innocent children. And so he was remembered and as kind of a hero there in the Jewish community for his brave and selfless actions during World War II. And so Jesus goes on in Matthew 6:22 and says, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? And when I read that for the first time, I remember I was in college and I'm like, what on earth? How is an eye a lamp, and how can light be darkness coming through my eyes? Like, what is going on there? There's a scholar, Douglas Hare, who says, listen, in those days, the ancients believed that the eye wasn't like a window that things came through. They thought that your eye was like a source of light, like it projected light, or it could project darkness. So it shaped how you saw the whole world, how you saw yourself. It was an important thing. And so what Jesus is telling us here is to have a healthy eye instead of an unhealthy eye. And what I love about the Greek language, guys, it is so important, is in Greek, the word for unhealthy is not actually unhealthy. The word in Greek is paneros. And paneros is a word that you guys pray every single Sunday when you say the Lord's Prayer, when you say, lead me not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, apatu paneru. So to be unhealthy is to have an evil eye. You've heard about the evil eye before, right? And when you travel to some other countries, they really freak out and have this little talisman. The evil eye, I need it to protect me. But this concept of the evil eye is it brings darkness. It distorts the world around you, and you aren't able to see it the right way. It kind of limits your vision, and it can mess up your entire life. And so Jesus says, if the light in you is actually darkness, if it's unhealthy, how great is the darkness? And sometimes we've been in those places, right, where we haven't held on to the light. We haven't had a healthy eye, and so our world wasn't illuminated the way that we needed it to be. So what's the opposite? In Greek, the word that's translated healthy into English for us is not actually healthy in the Greek either. The word in Greek is haplos, and it's a very rare word that really only occurs here and once in the Gospel of Luke, when it's the same exact sentence that Jesus is saying that's recorded by the Gospel writer Luke. So this word only occurs as 2 times in the entire New Testament, and it's a word that means single or simple. So we can have an unhealthy or evil eye, an outlook on our lives and the world, or we can have a single, simple outlook. And simple not in the way of stupid, but just focus. Like, how might our lives be different if we stop giving excuses, if we stop saying, you know what, God, I want a singular focus on you. I want you to be the only thing I'm looking at. I want to spend more time on you and my faith. But, I'll give you more time. I'll give you more of my money when I have more. I'm sorry, guys. There is not like a time fairy that's going to come and sprinkle more hours into your day. If you say it's your focus, if you want it, if it's all you're looking at, if it's your singular aim, then you're going to work towards that. We can say, I love my kids, I love my family, that I want to spend more time with them. But then we sign up our kids for 8,000 extracurricular activities, and we have to work 2 or 3 jobs to be able to pay for them to do all these things, and we end up having no time at all with the ones that we love. And we're working for resources to sustain something that separates us from our loved ones. Or we say, I love my spouse, I want to invest in them, but babysitters are expensive, so when the kids are grown, I'll try to get to know my best friend again. Guys, whatever it is God is calling you to do, whoever God is calling you to be, focus on that. Make that your simple, single aim, and the worry will dissipate because you know who you are, you know what you're about, you'll know what you will tolerate and what you won't, what drives you and what doesn't. You will feel free to say no to things that are not life-giving and do not make you into who God has created you to be. You'll have healthier relationships with others. It will be easier to let go of worry because your whole life will be illuminated by that light of that focus in your lives. And something that I love, love, love about the gathering at Scott Memorial United Methodist Church is I may have had a hand in shaping the DNA of this church, but the DNA of the church is intact. You know who you are. We have a single, simple purpose. We exist as a church to help people reconnect to God, to others, to themselves, and to creation. And my friends, we will continue to do that, whether I'm here or not. And our values, how we do that is that we are always going to welcome people with love. We will always reach out to those in need to bring physical and spiritual comfort, and we will always value people more than stuff. It's who we are. It is our singular focus. And so when we look at the future, we don't have to be worried. We don't have to be afraid because we know who we are. We know what we're about. We know where we're going. And I am excited and honored to be a part of that story. It was announced today in worship, and I do want to share with you in closing who the next pastor of the Gathering at Scott Memorial will be. And it is someone that I deeply respect, that I consider a friend. And I cannot tell you the joy that I feel knowing that this church is going to be in good hands because God is in control, and God has called Stephanie Kimmick Parker to be our next pastor. So she's transitioning from being at New Creation to the Gathering, effective like the end of June. June 30th is her first Sunday. And what I love about Stephanie, there's so many things. I love her energy. I mean, she's younger than me. She is excited. She's innovative. I love that I was in the Peace Corps, and she gave 2 years of her life to like the Methodist equivalent of the Peace Corps, serving as a U.S. 2 missionary in Los Angeles, working with the immigration population there and immigrants trying to get legal help and clinics. And she also worked at UCLA, helping to provide food for folks. So she has a heart centered on outreach, right? She wants to help bring physical and spiritual comfort to others. I respect her so much. She's from this area. She doesn't even have to move. She knows Kempsville and Virginia Beach. That's where she's living right now with her amazing husband, Floyd. They've been married 4 years. But she's strong, and yet she's warm and authentic, and she is a gift to our community. So I cannot wait for you guys. Some of you, about 70 or 80 of you, met her tonight, and we'll have more opportunities for you to get to know her. Maybe we'll do a webinar or crowdcast together like we did tonight with some Q&A so you can get to know her better. But she is truly a gift, and I'm excited for you guys to meet her, excited for what our future holds. A future, my friends, that we can boldly walk into without worry. Have a great night. I will see you next Sunday. Bye.